Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Shay here, and today we're going to be going over something that's very fundamental here to Nordcraft, and that is components. So, we're going to be following a very simple rule, and that is if it appears more than once, or we're going to use it in multiple places, we're going to create a component. Okay, so today here for you, I have a brand new project. We have nothing in here. All I have is a home page as well as a Xano service so that we can pull in some data because we're going to be creating a few components. Now, a few things to note. If you don't want to create your own components like this, there is an amazing library called Spark One that gives you most of the things that you would need to build an application, and anything you don't have in there already, you can just build on top of it. So if you don't want to build your components like this, definitely check out Spark One or Spark One to have a library of components already ready to be used. I'll probably leave a link in the description for that. Also, things to note, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a business and you need software automation done, please check me out at riseware.com. And if you find this content helpful, I would really appreciate it if you leave a like, leave a comment on what you'd like to see more of, and subscribe to the channel. All right, without further ado, let's get into this. So like I said, we have a brand new project. We have nothing in there. I have a list. We're going to be building a few things. We're going to be building an app provider, which is a component that we use to wrap every single page of our application, so just so we can have things be uniform. Okay, we're going to build a container. A container is just like how it sounds. That's where all the content of our website will live, and it'll be consistent with whatever the max width is. So like if we only want the content to be this far or this wide on the screen, we're going to have that in the container. We're going to be using a grid as well. Now that one's going to be a little bit more advanced because we have to put in some custom CSS ourselves because there's nothing in the UI currently yet to do that for you. And then we're going to build some card components. So I'm going to show you what we have over here in Xano. Over here in Xano, I just have some simple little data sets that we'll be using to create some cards that kind of look like these. I'll zoom in here. Well, the goal of today's video is we're going to build some card that looks similar to this. Okay, we're going to be doing the numbers. We're going to do this up arrow and the percentage of change there, all that beautiful stuff we're going to be doing today. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and build a app provider. Now, like I said, the app provider is what goes on every single page of your application. So if there's anything that needs to be globally shared across your entire application, that's where it'll live. So let's go ahead and build one. So let's go over here to components, and we'll create a new component, and you can name this however you want. There's no real right or wrong naming convention, just whatever works for you. For this tutorial, I'll keep it simple. I'm going to do app dash dash provider, and then let's build this. So whenever you create a component, you always start out here with a div. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few things. For one, I'm going to change this div over here in attributes to be main. This just has to deal with HTML semantics. I think that's how you say that. Nothing really you have to worry about. This is just saying that this is the main part of our application. Okay. And then in there, let's do some let's do some custom CSS here, or some CSS. I don't know why I said custom. And we're going to add a minimum height of 100%. So that means it's just going to take up the entire height of the screen, right? And now here we can change things that should be the same across our site, like the background color. Maybe we go for a little bit of a gray, right? So all I did here is I came down here to background and I removed the value that's there so that I can see my other values. And let's do like gray 100. Okay. And let's say for the text, we'll do another gray color and it'll be like gray 800, or something like that. All right. Lastly, what we'll do here is we'll come over right here under main. We'll press I as of the time of this recording. That's what brings up this add element panel here. It might change in the future, but we're going to add a slot. Okay, so now this component that we just created, all that's going to do is on every single page that we have, we're going to add this first, right? And what this slot does is that we can pass anything into it and it'll fill in this spot here. So if we go to the home page and I press I again and I add that app provider, you'll see we have our white background and all that stuff. And now here we could add other things like a heading and stuff like that. We can just pass it in right under because we have that slot there. So it just allows us to, well, like it says slot. So it says slot. So it allows us to slide things into it. Okay. So that's going to be the app provider component. Then next, what's in my notes? Let's go ahead and do a container. So we'll do the same thing. I'm going to create a component and I'm going to do UI dash dash container. Again, name it whatever you want. You can leave this as a div and we're going to do some CSS here. We're going to say that it will be the width of 100%. So fill the entire width of the screen, but we're going to set a max width of like 90 rem. If you don't know what rem is, it's pixels divided by 16. So if I did 90 times 16, that means this is equivalent to around 1440 pixels. So it'll be a max of 1440 pixels wide. We can see that here if I just put in a H1 right under it, and then I'll widen the screen by pressing 4. Oh, and sorry, what we have to do then is we have to find the margin. The reason I say find is because I don't know where they put it here from the recent changes. So I'm just going to search for it here, margin, and then we want to put auto on the left and the right so that it censors it, just like so. And now you can see here that it's going to that max of 90 rem. If we increase it to like 120, you'll see it get a lot wider. Okay, now for this, similar to the app provider, we want to add the slot component right under it. So now let's kind of see this in quick use. So say we come here to our app provider. Now in this app provider, we can add our container. And now in this container, it's going to keep the elements from going wider than what we specified. So now here we can put like an H1 and a paragraph. That was not supposed to go inside of that, sorry. H1 and a paragraph, and we'll see that it won't go wider than the max width that we set in the container. So there's two components already down that are pretty simple, pretty basic. Now let's go ahead and let's build a grid. So again, we're going to do a new component. I'm going to do UI dash dash grid. We're going to leave this as a div as well, and then we're going to add some CSS. Now, this is where we kind of get into a little bit more advanced things because what we need to change is not currently integrated here in the UI. What I mean by that is in display, we need to set this to grid, but as you see here, grid is not an option currently. So we have to come down here to the CSS panel to where we can put in custom CSS. And for this, we're going to do display and we're going to do grid, just like that. So you should only have display grid here. Actually, we're going to add one more and that'll be gap. And I set this to 2 rem. So if you remember, every rem is 16 pixels. So that means this is going to be a gap of 32 pixels between each thing in the grid. Okay. Then lastly, again, we're going to add a slot so that we can pass in anything to this grid. Okay, so now let's go back to our home page and we can put in this grid. And again, we have to do some more custom CSS to say how many columns we want in the grid. So again, with our UI grid selected here, let's scroll down to the CSS panel and we're going to type in grid template columns. And we're going to set the value to repeat. Let's do 3, and then 1 FR. So what this is saying is that we're going to create 3 columns. That's what this number is right here. And this 1 FR stands for fraction. So we're going to have three fractions. So it's going to be basically like each card will have 33% of the screen because that's 33.33 repeating percent of the screen. So we can see that if I just add in some like different H1s here, I'll just keep copying and paste it. There you see we have a row of 3. And if we add any more, or sorry, we have a row of 3, and if we add any more, it'll go to the, sorry, we have columns of 3. There we go. And then if we add another one, it'll create another row. Okay, so far we've created 3 components. We have a app provider, we have a UI container, and we have a UI grid. Now we can sort of get into our cards here. So this is going to be how I like to build my cards. You don't have to follow it the same way, but what I like to do is if I'm going to have cards in multiple places, I like to have sort of like a base element for cards. So for that, let's just go ahead and come to components and we can say UI grid dash dash card. Yeah, you can add a base there as well if you want to. I'll add base. We're gonna leave it as a div, and let's just add some default styling for this. For one, let's say the background color is going to be a little bit darker than the page background. So let's go gray 200. And then let's also add a border radius. Let's do like 1 rem so that we have some nice rounded corners. Let's also do padding up here of like maybe 2 rem. There we go. So now you see we have our little card here and it has the nice border around it. And like everything else we've done so far, we're going to pass in a slot here so that we can pass in other elements. All right, now we can see the use of it back over here on the home page in our grid. We can then add that card. Now you can see that the card is there, and here we can still pass in anything like an H1. I'm not sure how well you can see the difference there. I'm going to probably change the color a little bit more because I can't even see the difference myself because my color's kind of messed up. Let's go like that. Okay, you can clearly see that difference. All right, awesome. So that is 4 components that we've created so far. Now, just a quick recap. We created a app provider, which is going to go on every single page of our application. And in here, we just set the min height to 100%. And we set some default values for the background as well as the font color. Then if we come back to the container, this just limits how wide our content can get on the page. And you can always come here and change this to whatever fits your design for the application that you're doing. But currently we have it set to 90 rem. Then we also have this grid, a little bit more of an advanced component because we had to do it in the CSS panel because it's not currently integrated in the UI yet, but it should be pretty straightforward. And then we created this card base so that we could have the base styles or elements of a card, which is just that it's going to be this sort of rounded box, basically. Okay, so those are the 4 components that we've created so far. Now let's see what else we have to do. So we can see here that we also have some text here, right? So what we can do is we can also create components for things like headings or paragraphs, right? So let's go ahead and do one we'll do one for the heading so that we can have this dashboard, one right here, and then we'll do one for paragraph so we can have this right here, like where it says total customers. Okay, so let's go over here back into our project. Let's go into components, and I'm going to do UI dash dash H1. Right now here, we're going to get rid of the div because we don't need it. And I'm going to press I to bring up the add element panel, and I'm going to do heading 1. Now, inside of here, we're going to remove this text, and I'm going to, as you guessed, add a slot. We're going to add a slot there. And now here inside the slot, what you can do is you can provide a default value. So if there's nothing passed to it, it'll show this default value instead. So with the slot selected, let's go ahead and press I, and we can add text, and we can say heading 1. or something like that. Whatever you want to say. Just heading, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'll do just heading. Then here we can change anything we want that should be common around the H1s. So we'll just keep the size like it is, and we'll just go with that. So now I'll show you quickly what I mean by the default is that if we bring in that H1 into our card, you see that it says heading. And the reason that it says heading is because that is the default value that we set here in the slot. But if I actually pass something like a text, you'll see that it then changes to whatever that is. So just a way to have something default so you don't just see nothing and you have no idea what kind of goes there. Okay, let's remove that. Now let's go ahead and create our paragraph. So I can do UU dash paragraph, paragraph, like so. And again, we're going to remove that div. I'm going to press I again, get paragraph, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to add a slot, and I will add text, I guess, and just say this is a paragraph to have that as the default. Okay, I'm just going to rename this to fit the naming of everything else. There we go. All right, so now we've created a few components. We've created, what is it, 6 components already, and this might be all we need to start building something. So let's get building. In this home page now, I will keep the grid because we will actually use it, but right above it in the container, I'm going to add that H1 component that we created, and I'm going to drag it above the grid. And here I'm going to pass in text, and we're just going to say dashboard. Right now, here at the container, we can set some spacing here. So I'm going to come over to the layout sort of section in the right side, and I'm going to say 2 rem for spacing, just so we have some spacing between dashboard and the cards, as well as I might just do some padding at the top here, just so it's not pushed against the top of the screen there. Okay. So now that we have that created, let's go ahead and create what the card should look like. So what we can do, you can build components on top of components. And that's really the beauty of Toddle, or really just development in general, is that we can take this base and build another component basically utilizing that. Okay. What I mean by that is, you see this card, it already has things that are common. So it always has this sort of text. It has an icon, then it has the number, and then the change rate, right? So if that is something that's common, that should be its own component. So what we can do is we can come over to components and we can create a new one. And we can say that it's going to be a card, and that this card, what should we call it? Stats, I guess. Stat card. You can, again, just name this whatever works for you. I'm going to do UI dash card dash stats. Okay, we can remove the default div here, and we can add in that card base that we had. Okay, now we can build on top of this. So we can see that we have this little person icon or the money symbol. Now I won't add all of these, but let me go and get a person icon. I know you can't see what I'm doing currently. Let me go and quickly just get a person icon. And we'll go with this one. I just got an SVG. Okay, come over back here, and let's see, what do we have here? So we have this sort of top section, then we have a bottom. So I'll come in here, I'll add a div, and in this div, I'll add another div to have my SVG in there, the little person. And then we have some text. So then here I can say paragraph, and we can use our paragraph component. and we'll do total customers for now. So we'll get text and we'll say total customers. Okay, now it's just down to styling. All we have to do is come to this top one and say that we want them to be in a row so that they are side by side and in the center like so. We could add some spacing, maybe being like 1 rem like that. And then here, I just want to add this really quickly just to make sure. No, that is inherit. Okay. Now you can also create components of things like icons. So you see we have this SVG. We can actually come here and do extract as component, which will create it as its own component. We can say SVG dash dash person or something like that. And if I go back, you'll see now that we have that as well as a component. I'm just going to come over in here quickly. You don't have to do this part. I'm just going to change this to current color. So that this will change now based on whatever color we set. So if we change this to, like, say a red, oops, I didn't select that, like a red, you'll see that the icon changes to a red. I'll remove that. Okay. So now that we have that part, let's go ahead and add this big number part and then the symbol and then the change rate. Okay. So now here back at the card base, I'm going to add another div, and here we can have another paragraph. And then in that same div, I'll add another div, and that's where we're going to have our icons. And I do have the icons saved, but I'm going to create one more div in that to hold the icon. And then looks like we just need one more paragraph like so. So this is what, sorry, just pause this right now if we've gotten too far. This is what the entirety of this card should look like at this current stage. Okay, so now let's set some values in here. Let's get whatever number that is. And I'll do text and I'll say like whatever. That was a big number. I'll just do like that. All right. And then we can come here and set a text again and just, we're just setting some defaults right now just so we can see what it will look like. I just pressed 1 there just to make the screen a little bit smaller. As you can see here, these are the preset values that you have here. I just pressed 1 just to make this smaller so we can see what it looks like on mobile. Okay, and let's go ahead and make this text bigger. So let's go to font and we'll go size, and yeah, that seems about right. And we want these to be lined up. So on this div, we're going to go ahead and do row again and in the center. And then we can say that it looks like this is sort of being pushed edge to edge a little bit. So we can say double click right here and it'll push it edge to edge. Now back at the card base, these are a little bit too close. So we can go ahead and do 1 rem here. Now, here's a very quick tip to note is that we can edit components to an extent. So what I mean by that is this card base, right? This will directly affect whatever is the first element in the actual component. So you see, I added 1 rem here that's acting as if here in the div, I set it to 1 rem right here. So for example, you can see that the background color is this gray 300. And since that is set at the top level, I apologize for the voice crack there. Since that is set at the top level there, if I change it here at on the component to say something red, it'll actually change to red. Now I'll show you where that doesn't work. So if I change this and we come into here and I add another div. So now it's not the top level div, it is now the one inside of it, and say this was like a red or something like that, and let's just go ahead and pass the slot into there so we can see that it's red. I now cannot change that red color by default. So you see, even if I tried to do something like blue here, it's going to change only the white part. So if you want to change that, you have to use things like attributes or styling like classes, which we'll kind of get into a little bit. Okay, so I was just going to remove that really quickly, just so you know. I hope that made sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and I think that's all right. Maybe we can make this a little bit bolder. Mm, let's go with that. Okay. And did I add a percentage there? I did. And let's go ahead and get those icons. Now you can add whatever icons you want. I just have some here for this tutorial. Let's flatten that. Okay, here I have a up arrow. And again, I'm going to do the same thing I did up here. I'm going to extract this as its own component. So I'll do extract sv dash dash, I guess, up arrow or something like that. And I'll change this again to current color, just so that it'll change to whatever color I set. And then I'll grab my down arrow, paste that. There's our down arrow, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'll do extract as component, svg dash dash down arrow. Okay. And in this div right here, we want them to be aligned. So again, row, we could have them in the center, and we could add some spacing between them, whatever you like to see. Okay. Interesting. So, sorry about that. Let's go ahead and what should we do next? I think that should be it. So now we can kind of get into attributes. Okay, so we created this new component, this card stats here. Okay, so now we can get into attributes. Now, what attributes allow us to do is pass in data to this card. So, for example, things should change here. As you can see here, these have different numbers, these have different rates of change and different titles, right? So, we can change these by implementing attributes. So to implement an attribute, you can come over here to the right. Just make sure you have nothing selected. It won't work if you have something like the elements over here selected. So just press in the empty space here and you'll see attributes. So let me show you how to quickly use that. So let's say we want to pass in a value that should change this number. Let's go ahead and add attribute. We can do, say, number and add a test value of, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like so. Okay. Now, instead of manually setting this number, we can come right here in the paragraph where that number is, and we can press the formula here, and we can map this value to that number. So now you see that it changed to that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So that means now outside of the component where we're using it, like here on the home page, if I come into the grid here, I'll make this wider for you. If we come into the grid here and we add a stat card, and you see it says undefined, that's because now if we actually select the stat card and we come over here to attributes, it needs a number. So now I can add a different number, like say 9,000 or 900,000, And you'll see that that now becomes the number that is there. Okay. So that's something that you can do to pass information into components to change what they display. I don't think we'll be doing that for this example though. I just wanted to show you that. So I will remove that, delete, and then now we have to fix this because now it no longer has a value, and we'll just do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. Okay. I'll press 1 again just to make this smaller. So let's see now. So actually, so what I'm going to do is I am going to pass in the data that we get from Xano. So let's take a quick look at Xano. I'll increase this for you. I have 3 records, and we're going to show the last number compared to the first one, and then we'll use that to display our rate of change here. So we have 3 records, right? So I'm going to pass this entire value, maybe just the records part. We'll just pass the entire row of data to the component here. So I can come here to attributes, and I can say the data, and let me see here quickly, is that I know we're going to have an ID, we're going to have a created at, we're going to have records. So we can actually set some test value here. And this uses JSON. Sorry, this was not planned. So this is going to be live as I'm trying to figure out how I want to explain and showcase this. Being real with you, the simplest way to do it would to just be like to take a screenshot of like this row of data and then take it to ChatGPT and say to create like a JSON value test record, basically. But I'm going to do it manually. So we're going to have an object. In that object, we'll have an ID. I'll just have that be 1 for now. We're going to have a created, what is it? Created at. Created at. And that, so I'll just say date or something there. Then we're going to have records, and that's going to be an array of texts. And I'll just put some random values in here. So there we go. So what I just did is I just created just some test values so that we know what's going to be passed into this card here. Now, again, the simple way to do that is to just be to like take a screenshot of like a record, then go over to ChatGPT and paste it in there and just say to create like the JSON test record. Okay. So now we can start kind of mapping things. So for one, this number here, we want that to be the second number that is in records. So I can come here to the formula and I can say in data, we're going to look at records, and you can either select one here or you can also say last, and it will get the last item in this little array here. Okay. And then let's go ahead and now calculate this change rate. And to do that, I have to sneeze, apologize. Well, I had to sneeze, but now it left. Now to calculate this change rate, let's go ahead and create a formula. So let's come over here to formulas and we'll name it calculate change, right? And then we're just gonna do some math to know what this value is. So the math for that we're going to do is it's going to be data record. You know what? To make this easier, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to delete the whole thing. Calculate change. To make this a little bit easier, what we can do is we can come over here to variables and we can say old, and the initial value for that will be data, records, and first. So that first value, and then we could add new, and that'll be the current value. So we'll do data, records, and then last. So now to build that formula, we can do, what is it? New, I'm hungry, minus old. I apologize if you just heard my stomach. Um, and then we divide that by what is it? Old? Yeah, old. Then we multiply by 100. All right. I think that's correct. Let me check my notes. New minus old, and then divided by old, and then times 100. Yeah, that's right. And I don't know why that doesn't feel right, but then let's do round, and we'll say we'll round it to 2 decimal points, like so. Okay, so now that we have that, yeah, we can then come over here to the change rate. We can do another formula, and here we're going to do a concatenate because it doesn't have that percentage sign. And what we want to concatenate is the calculate change, and then we'll just add the percent sign. Okay, now let me look back at this, and now we're showing different colors. So it's green if it's positive with the up arrow, of course, and it's down and red with when it's negative. So what we can do is we can hide or show these arrows by showing it if it's a positive number that's greater than 0 or a negative number. So we can go to up arrow and I can do show and hide. And we only want to show this if calculate change is greater than 0. And then for the down arrow, we want to show this if calculate change is less than 0. Okay, let me make sure I did that right. I didn't put 0 there. There we go. So now you see we can only see the up arrow, and we could make this green by coming now. Let me explain something really quickly. We can't add classes like here in the attribute section on top of a component. We can add them here for things like if they're hovering and such like that, or if there's predefined classes or based on like the screen, but I can't add the class I need to make this green on the component level. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to wrap this in a div. And then this is where I will change the font color. And since the paragraph component has the font color set to inherit, is going to be whatever color the parent, like the closest parent above it that has a color set will be. So we'll apply the classes we need to this div instead. So let me get rid of that. And now we can say, so now we can say on this div, let's go to attributes, let's go to classes, and we can say that it'll be a green class if the same thing. So I guess I can make another formula for is positive or something like that if I'm going to do this same sort of formula like this in multiple places. So I could create another formula and we can name this is positive, and we can say calculate change and then greater than 0. So then here, instead of this, I can just say is positive, and then here I can say is positive and equals false. All right. Now, for green now on this div, I can come over to the formula and say that this will be true if it is positive, just like so. And then we'll say red, and we will do if positive equals false. Okay, so now we can come to styling, and in the style section right here, we can press the plus to go to classes. We can get that green one, and then with that selected, we can then change the color to green. Sorry, green. Let's go like that, and then we could add the other one for red. And if it's red, we want to get some red color like that. Okay, does the what's it called? The arrow also changes. So realistically, I probably should have added the classes on this div, which we can still do. Hey, it's going to be kind of live. I guess we live and we learn. So I think I could copy the properties here and then paste them there. With that, paste the classes. Okay, it doesn't place the classes as well. Sorry about that. So we got to do it again. So green, and we'll do is positive, red is, oh, that's not his server, is positive equals false. Okay, then we'll just do the exact same thing that we did here. Green. And then we'll add one for red. Like so. And then here I can then just go ahead and remove these. And I don't think we need anything here. I'll just clean this up, get rid of these. Goodbye. Goodbye. Yeah, and that should be it. Okay, is that all? We could change total customers and stuff like that, but I won't change that for this video. But I will make this a little bit bigger. Just come in here, set these to 100% so that they fill their parent. And then we can just make this maybe one around, make it a little bit smaller, something like that. Okay, so I think we've done it. Everything should be mapped now. I think we should be able to actually use this. So now, if I come over to the home page, and if you see things like a null or there's nothing there, what you could do is that you could set default. So if I come in here to stats, and I can say here that I can do default to right here. And then if there's nothing here, we can just add in some number. And then we can do the same thing here. And then we do default to, and then we can just do like some like 5.5. Oh, shoot, we can't put that there. Hold on a minute. No, I lied. We have to put it here. Default to 5.5. There's nothing there. So now if we go back to our home page, you'll see that we actually do have something there at least. So now that we've got those, we can go ahead and call our API to get those endpoints. And you can see here that it's just those records. I can name this something like Xano, get records. And then I can say here on the stat card that I want to repeat these based on how many records we get from the API. And then in the attributes for that, I can pass the actual data like so. And there you see the beauty of components. They work flawlessly. So that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen, on how you can create components here with Nordcraft, and I know there's so much that goes into components. Like, I know we touched on a little bit of everything. This might just have to be a part 1 video, but this should be or sorry, this should get you on your way to, um, building components. I did just notice that this is not actually red right here, so I don't think that in the card stats that I set this down arrow to be current color. I did not. Current color. There we go. Now it's red. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And if you did, do me a solid and leave a like, leave a comment on what you'd like to see more of, and subscribe to this channel. I really do appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, happy building.